Joe Pearl, subbing in for Nancy Pearl. Normally, we would simply be reviewing a novel, but today we have a special guest, which will make our show much more enlightening. Today we're going to be looking at the story One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich with its author, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Alexander, for the people who haven't read the book, could you give a brief summary of the contents of the book?
Yes. The story talks of one day in the life of Ivan Denisovich and the challenges he faces while spending his time in a Soviet work camp or gulag for political prisoners.
Is it true that the stories told are based off of personal experiences?
Yes, that is true. I spent 9 years in a Soviet gulag. Never since I have attempted to raise awareness around the world of the hard condition of these work camps.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you went through in these work camps?
Yes, I was sent to prison after having written a letter which was derogatory towards Stalin's war policies. I wrote the letter to my dear friend, and due to this letter I was sentenced to 8 years in prison.
Is there any particular message about these gulags that you are trying to convey to the audience?
Well, as I stated before, I was trying to educate the citizens of the USSR of the horrible working conditions, but I was also trying to enlighten people of the unfair, corrupt, and harsh nature of Stalin and the government that was ruling over us.
Can you give us an example of the unjust and corrupt behavior of the government?
Yes. I tried to highlight the lack of justice by using the main character, Ivan Denisovich, as an example. He was put in the gulag because he was accused of being a spy. In reality, he had escaped with the other Soviets from a German prisoner of war camp and returned to the front lines, but the Soviets didn't believe him. And then, another way injustice is shown as in the camps, and the guards would take portions of the rations that the prisoners received, leaving them with just enough to survive.
As mentioned before, the book speaks out against the oppression from the communist government of the USSR. Is that advocating for democracy instead?
Well, I would not say that I am advocating to a switch to democracy, but I am advocating for the eradication of corruption in government. And if history has taught us anything, centralizing power to a few leaders inevitably leads to corruption, social stratification, and exploitation. Interestingly enough, this exploitation is what led to the communist economic system arising because it promotes equality amongst everyone. However, we can see that this equality cannot be achieved because of corruption.
For those who don't know, this story is very profound because it is the first publication of Stalinist repression throughout the Soviet Union. Mr. Solzhenitsyn, can you comment on the awards won by this book?
Well, in 1970, I was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, which was a very humbling event. I am honored to have won this award.
That is incredible. Congratulations. Can you tell us about any other notable works of yours, such as the Gulag Archipelago?
Yes, I can. The Gulag Archipelago, like One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, is also about the gulags and my experiences in them. The difference between the two is that in the Gulag Archipelago, I focused on the unfairness of the Soviets governing on threat of imprisonment. I also highlighted the unstableness of the Soviet economy, relying on public works from these prisoner labor camps. Obviously, the Soviets can't keep operating this way without some sort of rebellion arising.
Can you speak to the accusations that were made against you in 1968 in the Literary Gazette, which is a Soviet newspaper, that said you were not following Soviet principles?
Well, I was telling the people of the truths that happened to me, and the Soviet leaders did not like how they were expressed. It does not faze me because I was truthful in my writing, and I am happy with my book.
The paper also said that you had turned from a Soviet Russian into a Soviet enemy, and later branded you as an enemy to the state. Can you comment on that?
I realized that they had to say that because they were painted in a negative light, but I still feel that what they did was wrong, because what I wrote was correct. I was deported in 1974 because of this incident.
Well, I think what you did was honorable. Your book is considered by many to be one of the most influential books in USSR history. Even at a US and Soviet summit, human rights was brought up as a topic of concern because of your book.
Well, it is comforting to know that my writing is making a difference in the world.
Yes. So, Mr. Solzhenitsyn, I read your book recently and I completely agree with all the praise it has received. I think it is a fantastic book and is moving on multiple levels. One of the things I found most interesting was the idea of freedoms. One of the characters in the story said that the people in the camps had just as much freedom as the Soviet citizens. Can you talk about that?
Well, in the Soviet gulags, we were political prisoners, so there's not much they could do to make us. They could not do to us besides make us do more work. Because of this, we had the freedom to say whatever we please and not get in trouble for it. On the other hand, the average Soviet citizen cannot say anything negative against the Soviets because of the censorship. They may have the freedom to do and go as they please, but they lack freedom of speech. But the lack of freedom of speech is a very repressive idea.
Yes, I completely agree. And to all of our listeners in the audience, I would recommend this book to all age groups. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich is a compelling book highlighting the internal issues of the USSR. It shows these social issues and how the prisoners are reduced to animals in order to survive. The only way Ivan manages to survive is through his cunningness and resourcefulness, which is contrasted from other characters such as the character Fetyukov, who don't know how to survive. Although the prisoners shouldn't have to act like animals to survive in the first place, it's wrong. This book is good for young readers who need to understand the injustices that are present in the world and to speak out against them. Mr. Solzhenitsyn, thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you for putting my book on your show.
Well, that is our show for today. But for all of you who want to buy the novel, we'll have it available on our website within the hour. Checking out from Booklust, it's Joe Pearl.